The greatest battlefield you will ever step onto is not out there in the world. It's not the market. It's not your workplace. It's not the economy or the news or the battlefield of opinions that rage across screens and conversations every day. No, the most brutal, the most decisive, the most soul-defining war you will ever fight is within, and until you win that war, you will never command life, because life does not obey those who haven't first conquered themselves. You want power, control, wealth, freedom, influence. You want to lead, create, achieve beyond measure. Then hear me now. Self-mastery is not optional. It is the price of admission. Look around. The broken dreams, the quiet desperation, the sleepless nights filled with regret, they are not caused by fate or luck or some mysterious external force. They are caused by undisciplined minds living in undirected bodies. They are caused by people who never learned to govern themselves, their thoughts, their emotions, their habits, their hunger. You are not here to simply exist. You are not here to merely react. You were born with the power to choose, to shape, to will into reality the vision that lives in your imagination. But power unused is power wasted, and a king who does not rule himself becomes a slave to everything. Thomas Edison once said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." But what he left unsaid is that the perspiration, the grueling, daily war of willpower, must first be turned inward. Before you light up the world, you must set fire to your limitations, burn down the lies that whisper you're not good enough, torch the excuses, destroy the distractions that steal your focus like thieves in the night. Do you think Carnegie built an empire by waiting for motivation? Do you think Ford transformed transportation by listening to fear? Do you believe Abraham Lincoln stared into the chaos of a divided nation and said, "I'll act when I feel ready"? No, they commanded their minds, they disciplined their beliefs. They trained their thinking like warriors sharpening a blade because they understood the truth. You are either mastering yourself or being mastered by circumstance. Every day you wake up, the first battle begins between who you were yesterday and who you demand yourself to become today. And it is won not through feeling, but through decision, through clarity, through action rooted in purpose, not emotion. Self-mastery is not about being robotic. It is about being so clear in your purpose, so unshakable in your standards, so relentless in your execution, that no feeling, no fear, no fatigue can sway you. It begins with mindset, because mindset is the lens through which you see every opportunity, every challenge, every breath. Change the lens and you change the landscape. Most people live in reaction. They wake up and check their phones. They absorb the chaos of the world before they've even claimed their own thoughts. They scroll, they compare, they complain, and they wonder why their lives feel hollow. But the Master wakes up and speaks command over his day. He writes his thoughts before the world can write them for him. She breathes deeply, deliberately, anchoring her spirit in vision before stepping into action. Mindset is not positive thinking. It is intentional thinking. It is taking dominion over your attention, which is your most valuable currency. Attention is the seed of greatness. Whatever you water with attention grows. If you feed doubt, doubt multiplies. If you feed purpose, purpose takes root and bears fruit. That's why belief matters, because belief is the architect of your reality. You will never rise above the ceiling of your belief. Not because life won't let you, but because you won't let yourself. Think of Walt Disney, a man who was fired from a newspaper job because he lacked imagination. Think of Henry Ford, whose early businesses failed before he revolutionized manufacturing and put the world on wheels. They were not handed belief, they chose it, again and again, in the face of failure, in the face of rejection, in the silence when no applause came. They believed not because of evidence, but because they decided to believe. And that belief created the evidence. It summoned the energy. It ignited the persistence. It became the gravitational force that pulled success out of the ether and into form. So let me ask you, what do you believe about yourself? Not when things are easy, not when people are cheering, but when it's dark, when it's silent, when the doubt creeps in like smoke under the door. That's where belief must live, in the shadows, in the silence. In the sacred space where only you can plant the flag and declare, this is who I am, this is where I'm going, and nothing, no voice, no setback, no failure will turn me back. This is the essence of vision, not vague dreams or passive wishes, but vivid, deliberate, burning clarity. Vision that is specific. Vision that demands action. Vision that cuts through fog and fatigue and forces you to show up when others fall. You cannot command life without a clear target. You cannot hit what you will not define. Most people drift because they never dared to decide what they truly want. They are afraid to commit because commitment burns the bridges behind you. But understand this, vision is not confinement. It is liberation, because when you know what you want, you are free from the tyranny of distraction. You are free from the noise, the opinions, the temptations to be everything to everyone. You become singular. You become dangerous. Now listen, this is just the start of the ascent, and where you go from here will determine not just the quality of your achievements, but the depth of your mastery, because it's not enough to see the mountain. You must climb. Every mountain bowed to by men was once mocked as impossible. Every summit reached began with a step no one could see, and yet most will never start, not because they can't, but because they refuse to bear the weight of discipline. Discipline is the bridge between what you want and who you must become to get it. It is not glamorous, it is not loud. It shows up in the dark when no one is watching. It trains in silence, it suffers in stillness. And it produces giants. Do you think greatness comes wrapped in excitement? Do you think mastery feels like fireworks every morning? No, mastery is mundane. Discipline is repetition day after day, hour after hour, doing what must be done, especially when it no longer feels exciting. Discipline is doing the work after the mood has left the room. And if you want to command life, if you want to rise above the mediocrity that's drowning nations in noise and laziness, you must forge discipline like steel in the furnace of your own will. Consider the life of Benjamin Franklin. He didn't stumble into brilliance. He built it with morning rituals, strict self-audits, personal creeds. He tracked his virtues, he measured his growth. He lived each day with intention sharpened like a blade. That is the work of a man who refuses to drift. That is the work of someone who has mastered self. And what's the next step after discipline? Action. Ruthless, consistent action. Because belief without motion is illusion. Clarity without execution is hallucination. A vision that lives only in your head is nothing more than a fantasy. Life only responds to movement. You don't attract success by dreaming, you attract it by acting. Even when afraid, even when uncertain, even when you don't feel ready, especially when you don't feel ready, Alexander the Great didn't wait for a sign. He became the sign. He stepped into his campaign not with full certainty of outcome, but with full conviction of self. That is what makes kings. That is what commands the forces of life to bend. And still there's something deeper, something quieter but no less powerful, gratitude. The world teaches us to chase endlessly. To want more, acquire more, hustle harder. But what if the key to power is not more, but appreciation, because gratitude is presence. Gratitude is recognizing the miracle in your breath, in your strength, in your struggle. It grounds you in the moment. It sharpens your focus. It shifts your energy from desperation to abundance. No man commands life from a place of scarcity. The truly powerful stand in the fullness of what already is, and from that place they build. They are not victims of lack. They are creators of plenty. Think of Oprah Winfrey, raised in poverty, scarred by trauma, silenced by pain, and yet she chose gratitude. She chose to see herself not as broken, but as forged. And that gratitude became the fuel. That gratitude became the gateway. It transformed her scars into strength. It turned her pain into purpose. That's the power of perspective. That's the alchemy of gratitude. And when gratitude meets ambition, when appreciation meets intention, that is when the soul becomes unstoppable. But still life is not predictable. Winds shift, storms come. The world can betray your plans in an instant. Which brings us to the next foundation of mastery, adaptability. You want to command life, then you must be water. Bruce Lee said it best: be formless, shapeless like water. Why? Because water doesn't resist the rock. It flows around it. It finds another path, and given time it wears the rock down. That's mastery. It's not rigidity. It's not clinging to a single path. It's the flexibility of vision, the ability to bend without breaking, the humility to evolve, the wisdom to know when to pivot, when to endure, when to burn the old plan and rebuild. The greatest leaders of history were not just strong, they were adaptable. Lincoln changed course. Churchill rewrote strategies. Jobs reinvented Apple again and again. They were not trapped by yesterday's success or today's ego. They flowed with clarity and adapted with courage, and this is how you stay alive in the game of greatness. Not by being the smartest, not by being the most talented, but by becoming the most resilient. Resilience is the spine of self-mastery. It's the voice that says, no matter what breaks, I will rebuild. It's the eyes that see failure and still say, this is not the end. It's the soul that has been shattered and yet still sings. Do you think Nelson Mandela was unafraid during his decades in prison? No, but he did not break, because his purpose was bigger than his pain. He understood something most never will, that real strength is not in how loudly you rise, but in how quietly you endure, how calmly you rebuild, how patiently you persist. So ask yourself, are you building a spirit that can bend but not break? Are you crafting a mind that does not collapse under pressure? Because the storms are coming, that's guaranteed. What's not guaranteed is whether you'll still be standing when they pass. And if you are willing to fight that quiet war within, to reject comfort, to choose discipline, to take bold action, to live with gratitude, to adapt like water and rise again and again like fire, then hear this. You will command your life. And nothing, no man, no force, no fear will have the power to take it from you. But there is one element more elusive than resilience, one thread that binds all mastery into reality learning. You cannot master yourself if you cannot master the art of learning. Because you are not a finished product. You are not complete, and the moment you believe you've arrived, that's the moment you begin to rot. Learning is the weapon of the wise. It is the sharpening of the blade. It is the mirror that shows you where you are blind, and the hammer that forges your potential into power. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb in a flash of genius. He failed thousands of times. He studied every mistake. He adjusted, he evolved, until the darkness surrendered. That is what learning looks like. It's not academic. It's not confined to classrooms. It's brutal. It's humbling. It demands that you admit, I was wrong. I can improve. I will become better. And that's where most people stop, because their ego is louder than their hunger, because it's easier to protect an identity than to challenge it. But mastery, true mastery, requires that you slay the version of you who thinks he knows it all. Every master was once a student. Every legend was once a fool. The difference, they kept learning. Think of Walt Disney, bankrupt, rejected, laughed at. They told him he lacked imagination. He studied, refined, experimented not just in art, but in business, storytelling, architecture, psychology, because he knew that to build a world, you must know the world, and if you wish to command life, you must learn from it every day. From pain, from silence, from failure, from success, from critics, from your own mistakes. Treat every moment like a teacher, because the world will always give you feedback, but only the humble will hear it. Only the bold will act on it. Only the wise will grow from it. And when you stack learning on top of action, when you pair discipline with curiosity, you become something dangerous to the world of mediocrity. You become someone who cannot be stopped. But listen closely, there is a final force, perhaps the most powerful of all, and that is identity. Because no matter what you do, no matter how disciplined, how action-driven, how intelligent, you will always return to the level of who you believe you are. If you see yourself as average, you will sabotage excellence. If you see yourself as a loser, you will reject success. If you believe you're meant to fail, you will find a way to fail. Even when winning, the mind does not tolerate conflict. If your results outgrow your identity, the subconscious will pull you back down. That's why mastering yourself starts with mastering the image you hold of yourself. You must see yourself as the kind of man or woman who wins. You must believe it so deeply that it becomes the foundation of your decisions, habits, standards. Muhammad Ali said, "I am the greatest," long before the world agreed. Why? Because he understood the world responds to the man who has already decided who he is. This is why people with potential never reach it. They haven't redefined their identity. They're trying to build an empire with a peasant's mindset. They're trying to lead armies with the beliefs of a follower. It doesn't work. The shift must begin within. You must wake up every day and practice being the future you. Talk like him, walk like her. Move like they already live in you. This isn't delusion. This is discipline of the imagination. This is psychological strategy. Napoleon Hill called it autosuggestion, the ability to implant belief so deeply into the subconscious that it becomes reality. You don't just hope. You condition your mind morning and night with precision and clarity, because the mind is clay, and most people let the world shape it into weakness, but not you. You are the sculptor. You decide what identity you wear. You choose your thoughts like a warrior chooses his weapons, and with that identity, with that belief anchored deep into your bones, you rise not as a victim of circumstance, but as a commander of cause. You rise with the weight of discipline in your chest, the fire of purpose in your eyes, and the rhythm of resilience in your blood. You rise not because it's easy, but because it's who you are now. And in that moment, when everything aligns, your vision, your habits, your beliefs, your discipline, your gratitude, your adaptability, your learning, your identity, you become unstoppable. The world bows to the man who has mastered himself. Because nothing is more powerful than a soul on fire with purpose, forged in discipline, unshakable in identity, and relentless in action. That is how you command life. So now the question stands. Not what will the world give you, but what will you give to the world? Because the man who masters himself does not live merely to take. He builds, he leads, he serves, he becomes the example that others quietly measure themselves against. You want power, then be the one who turns chaos into clarity. Be the one who holds his center when storms rage. Be the one who walks into uncertainty with the unshakable calm of a man who knows who he is. Because life is not tamed by chance. It is commanded by presence, and presence is the result of mastery. You must become the kind of person who inspires reality to respond, not through luck, not through hope, but through unrelenting commitment to your inner standard. People follow those who have paid the price to lead themselves. They listen to the man who speaks not with noise, but with weight, because they can feel it in his eyes, in his voice, in his decisions. He has walked through fire and come out golden. That's what you're building, a life that cannot be shaken because it wasn't built on sand. It was carved from the rock of principle and forged in the furnace of discipline. You don't get that by dabbling. You don't touch that level by dabbling in motivation, dabbling in effort, dabbling in belief. You go all in every day without applause, without validation, without shortcuts. You give your word and you live inside it. Because once you've mastered yourself, no one can take that from you. They can steal your money, strip your titles, burn your house to the ground, but they cannot take the man you've become. That's the real prize. Not just success but strength, not just wealth but wisdom, not just reputation but reputation with yourself, because at the end of your life, when everything else is stripped away, the only question that remains is this: did you become who you were meant to become? Not who others wanted you to be, not who your fears told you to be, not who your past tried to keep you as, but the one buried inside the one you glimpsed in your quietest moments. The one who whispered dreams to you when the world was silent. The one who stared back in the mirror when you dared to believe in more. That version of you, he's waiting, she's real, and they only show up for the one who dares to earn it. You don't stumble into that self. You forge them through repetition, through faith, through action, through the hard decisions that no one sees, through the lonely work when no one's watching, through the 1,000 invisible victories that compound in the dark until the light cannot ignore you anymore. This is your calling, to rise from the ashes of mediocrity and command the fire, to meet your fear not with retreat, but with a warrior's grin, to walk straight into discomfort and claim your evolution. You are not here to survive, you are not here to drift. You are not here to be one more silent soul buried under a mountain of excuses. You are here to dominate your destiny, to wake up and train your mind like a weapon, to organize your habits like a general preparing for war, to hold your vision like it's the very breath keeping you alive, to demand from yourself the level of effort that legends are made from, because when you do that, when you live like that, you don't need to beg life to give you anything. You command it, not with arrogance but with alignment, not through force but through focus, not from entitlement but from earned identity. And when you walk through the world like that, calm, clear, convicted, the world doesn't just notice, it responds, doors open, people follow, opportunities appear, not because you're lucky but because you've become a force of nature. You have become the man, you have become the woman, the one others said couldn't exist. The one even you doubted once upon a time, but you kept going, you kept showing up, you bled for this identity. You broke the shackles, you buried the excuses. You killed the coward version of yourself and stood tall in the ashes. And now you see it clearly. This life was never out there waiting to be found. It was inside you all along, waiting to be awakened. So stand now not as a student of motivation, but as a master of your fate. Let the world feel the ground shift beneath your presence. Let the sky part when you speak with vision. Let your legacy begin now not in theory, but in practice. Because this is how you master yourself. This is how you command life.